Hello, 7th grade math. This is Miss Odell, and today our lesson is going to be on fraction to decimal equivalence. This is coming from your textbook on page 36 and 37. So I recommend that you open up your textbook with me so you can follow along with me as I talk you through this lesson. All right? So first thing we're going to talk about is, if you look at the top of the page, it tells you to recall that fraction bars indicate division. Typically, you see a little division sign written like this. But when you see a fraction bar and you have 2 over 3, that is also referring to division, okay? So, with that said, that goes along with our lesson today in changing fractions to decimal because you have to do some division. And many of you do not like division. I know that from experience. But we're going to get this down and we're going to get it mastered. All right, so let's take a look at this. So a fraction that you want to divide. So again, they took 21 over 40. And you remember how I tell you, I'm not going to actually do the division, but I'm just going to tell you, I always tell you that the denominator falls out of the house so that the numerator can fall in the house, okay? As you see here, 40 would not go into 21, so they had to put a decimal and annex a 0. 40 did go into 210 5 times. Notice the decimal up here, okay? That left you with 10, annex another 0. 40 went in there 2 times because 2 times 40 is 80. That leaves you 20. You're ready to get, move it on down, drop it. And then 40 times 5 equals 200, which now gives you a 0 remainder. So that tells you that that equivalent is 0.525. Now, let's just a few of these here real quick, okay? So, all right, so here are 3 fractions. We're going to start here with 4 over 5 or 4/5. So I'm going to do my division. I'm going to drop my 5 out, let my 4 drop in. 5 will not go into 4, so I've got to put a decimal there and annex a 0. But how many times will 5 now go into 40? 8. 5 times 8 is 40. You're going to subtract, and that leaves you with 0. So your decimal equivalent is 0.8, and that is your answer. Okay? Now, moving to the next one is one that I think that you know that, let me just remind you that the bottom number is it's the denominator, but it's referring to the whole. So you're saying you have 3 of the 4 wholes, okay? So in other words, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And 3 of these are filled in. Could you say that you have 3 of the 4, and so that is equivalent to 0.75, which is one that you need to memorize, and we're going to get to that list here in just a moment. Or you can divide it. But I think that this is one that when you see, you will automatically know 3/4 equals 0.75 or 75%. Annex a 0. 4 times 5 is 20. Minus 20 gives you 0. And so your answer is 0.75. Now, let's talk about 5 over 9. Okay? So I'm going to start my division. I want you to follow along with me. This is really important, you guys. So 9 will not go into 5. How many times will 9 go into 50? Well, we know that 5 times 9 is 45. It will not go anymore. Okay? So when I do my subtraction here, I'm going to get 5, and I'm going to annex a 0. All right, so we annexed a 0, and I noticed that when we do so, we have another 50, just like we did here. So we're going to get 5 times 9. And if you notice, you're going to have a repeating decimal here, and it's going to keep going on and on and on and on. Now, when that happens, here's what you're going to do. Look with me on page 36. You're going to see that a fraction that divides evenly is a terminating decimal. But when a fraction results begins to repeat over and over and over. That's called a repeating decimal. And what you will do in this case is you put a line over the number that begins to repeat. So really, ultimately, you just have to write your answer as 0.5 with a line over it, which indicates it's a repeating decimal. Okay, so moving on. Now, notice that you have fraction decimal equivalents. This is a list that they would like for you to memorize. So notice that in Table H, and this is actually in your textbook as well on page 36 in the middle, 1/4 we automatically know equals 0.25. 1/2 is 0.5. 3/4, which is what we talked about, is 0.75. I'm not going to go through and read all these, but I want you to go through and look at these ones, and you can refer back to these from time to time as you do work. But these are ones that you really need to memorize. And know that when you see 3/5, it's actually 0.6 or just 0.6. That's actually the same. Okay, so now let's think about if we have a fraction such as 347 and it's written over 1,000. Okay, so think about that. We notice that the fraction, the denominator, is a fraction that is of a power of 10. So the decimal equivalent can very quickly be found in this example, and I know you guys have done this before. So you simply write the numerator, which is 347. Now, you write the numerator as a decimal with as many places behind the decimal point as there were zeros in the power of 10. So how many zeros do you have here? 1, 2, 3. So where would the decimal go? Watch me. 1, 2, 3. So your answer is 0.347. All right? So if you have, let's say, 315 over 1,000. Again, you're going to write your numerator and then start and count 1, 2, 3 because you have 3. And your answer is 0.315. Let's do a few more of those again. So let's just say that we have 107 over 100. All right, watch closely. So I'm going to write that number, the numerator. How many zeros do I have? 1, 2. So then I'm going to count back. 1, 2. So what is my answer? 1.07. So you actually have a whole number here because 107 is more than 100. That tells you that you are going to have a whole number there, okay? Let's look at another view. Let's say that you have 3 over 10. You write that number and you have 1 0, so there is your answer, 0.3. Okay, let's say that we have 3 over 20. We know that 20 can be converted to a power of 10s, which is 100, very easily by making it an equivalent fraction. So we know that if we multiply 20 times 5, we have to multiply the top by 5. Whatever we multiply that by, we have to multiply by there. And we get 15 over 100. So then you write your numerator out and you move your decimal and your answer is 0.15. So if you write your answer as 0.15, they are both correct. Okay? I think you guys have done this before, but it's good practice. Now, also, decimals can be expressed as fractions and reduced. For example, you're doing the opposite of what we just did, okay? So let's say that you have 0.75. This would be expressed as 75. How many decimals places do you have? 1, 2. So you put that 1 there, and here are your 2 places. So 75 over 100. All right, let's look at a few more of these before we move on. Let's say that we have Let me just give you 2.034. How would we express that? Well, here's what you would do. You have your whole number, because remember, you're changing it to a fraction. You put your fraction bar. You put 34. How many places? How many places are behind the decimal? 1, 2, 3. So that would be 1,000. 1, 2, 3 represents the zeros. 1, 2, 3. Okay, whole number first. Numerator is this, and then your 1,000. Let's look at a few more. All right, so they're asking you actually to write your answers when you are changing a decimal to a fraction, to write it in reduced fractions. However, right now, for today's lesson, it is absolutely okay if you do not reduce it. For example, if you have 0.475, and if you wrote this as a fraction, you're going to put your fraction bar, put your point, or the 0.475 converts to 475. How many decimal places do you have after this? The decimal point 3, put your 3 zeros there, and you're 1,000. Now, 475 over 1,000 will definitely reduce. I'm not going to ask you to reduce that today. We'll get to that next week. As long as you write it correctly in the fraction form from a decimal, I'm good with that right now. All right, so your assignment is going to be page 37. You're going to do 2 through 18 all. You're not going to do number 1, but 2 through 18 all. All right, that's it. Have a good day.